Hey, 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 hey. What's up, everybody? Man, it is so good. So good to be back with you guys tonight. Man, first, before I jump into the message, let me just do a few shout outs. Let me shout out to the east side really quick. That's Woodbury. That's White Bear Lake. That's here at Lionel Lakes. Can you guys just make some noise at those campuses really quick? Just make some noise for me, yes? Thank you. And then, of course, I got to throw it over to the west side. That's Anoka, Blaine, Spring Lake Park. So can we make some more noise, even here at Lionel, for those? We're so glad you're joining us. And, of course, I'm not forgetting about our friends down in Wayzata. What you guys might not know is that we have a group of high school students that are meeting in a house somewhere in Wayzata. And they're joining us live right now. They are going to join us live all year long. So can all of our campuses please make some noise for our friends down in Wayzata really quick? So pumped that you guys are here. Hey, if you're new, first of all, I am so glad that you made it here tonight. I hope that you keep coming all year long. My name is Brandon. I am the high school teaching pastor, which just means that you're going to hear a lot from me this year. And this thing that you're a part of is called Revolution. So what I thought we would do at the beginning of this year together is that we would spend some time in a series called The Revolution, really talking about and thinking through what does it mean for us to be a part of Jesus' revolution. You see, we believe that Jesus changes things. And not only does he change things, but he invites you and I to be a part of his kind of change, his way of life, his revolution in the world. So the question is, what does that really even mean? What does it mean to be a part of Jesus' revolution? Well, over the next few weeks, we're gonna be talking about that. Now, a part of any revolution, whether it's one person or a large group of people, it usually always begins with somebody feeling like they need to find a new direction. They need to find a new way of living. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'll level with you. Really, the only time in my life that I begin to feel like I need a new direction in my life is when I get into some kind of trouble. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like a few years ago, my father-in-law, Joel, asked me to help him build a fence in his backyard. Now, people don't normally ask me to help them with those kind of things because I have no idea what those things are and how you do them. But he was my father-in-law, and so he was asking me, but it was kind of telling me, do your parents ever do that where they ask you something, but they're really telling you that you're gonna do this thing? That's where I was, okay? And so I agreed to do it, and my job was really easy. I was supposed to dig the holes that the guideposts of the fence would eventually go in, and all the holes were marked in the lawn. All I had to do was dig a hole deep enough so the pole would, stay upright. And the only problem that I kept running into were there were these roots underneath the ground. And so what I would do is instead of sawing them or clipping them, I would just take the shovel and I would bash them until they broke, and then I would keep digging. Now, Joel came to me and he said, Brandon, stop doing that. Not everything under the ground is a root, and you could dent my shovel or you could hurt yourself or something even worse could happen. Now, listen, I know that I'm not very good with fixing things or whatever, but I felt like I knew how to dig a hole in the ground. You know what I'm saying? So when he was on the other side of the house, I was by myself. I was digging a new hole. I came on what I thought was a root, and I'm thinking, no big deal. I'll just break this bad boy. And it honestly made me feel kind of awesome and tough whenever I broke through the roots. You know what I'm saying? So I grabbed the shovel. I lifted it up. With everything I had, I threw the shovel down on the root, and then I just heard, psss. And as soon as I heard that voice, I looked like this dude, because I did not know what just happened. And then in the same moment, I see Joel running around the corner of the house in slow motion, screaming, "What did you do?" And the truth is, I had no idea what I had done until Joel explained to me in a panic that I had just hit a gas line. And now gas was protruding into the air all around us. And if even one spark got a hold of that gas, their house might catch on fire and even blow up. So I panic, a full-on panic. I run to the neighbor's house. This is true. I run to the neighbor's house, and I'm like, "Hey, do you guys smoke? Please don't smoke or light up match or do anything." And they all thought I was crazy because I thought my in-laws' house was about to blow up. We had to call the fire department, and this is true. The fire department showed up. A firefighter gets out looking very tough and very cool, and he says out loud, "Only an idiot would hit a gas line thinking that it was a root." And I was literally standing behind him like, "Hey." Now, thankfully, the house didn't blow up, and we fixed the gas line, and the firefighters were awesome, and eventually Joel asked somebody else to fix his stupid fence, okay? But the reason I got into that literally dangerous situation is because even though Joel was telling me, stop what you're doing, turn around, don't do it that way, I just kept on digging. I kept on going until I got into so much trouble that I had no other option but to turn around. And isn't it so true that often in our lives, we will do things over and over and over again until they cause us some kind of trouble? We might even have people in our lives telling us to not do those things, or that those things are gonna cause us harm, but we just keep on digging. And the problem that so many of us run into is that we are actually hitting the gas line of our life. And if we don't turn around, if we don't find a new direction, something will eventually explode. So let me ask you a question tonight. What's the gas line in your life? Like, what are you bumping up against right now that will eventually explode? Maybe for some of you, it's something that happened this past summer that you're still working through. Maybe it's habits or people that you keep going back to, but they consistently bring you down. Maybe God has been telling you to do something, urging you to say no to something, but you keep having God way over here and keeping him at a distance and not changing anything in your life. When we run into that kind of problem, when we run into that kind of trouble in our life, we have an option. Either we turn around, we find a new direction, or we just wait until something explodes. My encouragement to you tonight is to get up the courage to turn around, find a new direction before you find yourself in that kind of trouble. So the question for us tonight is, how do you do that? How do you find a new direction in your life? Well, the revolution that Jesus invites us into always requires that we turn around. It always requires that we look for a new way forward. So what I want to do tonight is I want to give you two ways that Jesus teaches us to turn, to find a new direction and a new way of living. The first way Jesus teaches us to turn is this: to turn from sin. There's a story in the book of Luke, chapter 19, about Jesus and this guy named Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was a Jewish tax collector for the Roman Empire. So it was his job to gather up money and taxes from other Jews and take that money and give it to the Roman Empire. But Zacchaeus had a bit of a reputation. Not only would he take money from his fellow Jews and give to the Roman Empire, he would take a little bit extra and keep for himself. And everybody knew about it. And so everybody hated him. Nobody wanted to associate with Zacchaeus because he was a thief and a liar and a traitor. But then one day, Jesus came to Zacchaeus' town, and he had a reputation too. His kind of reputation was the one that he hung out with the kind of people that nobody wanted to associate with. Because Jesus wasn't intimidated by anybody's social standing, whether it was really important or really unimportant. Didn't matter. Jesus always made time for people who were overlooked. And so here's what happened. Anytime Jesus went into a village or a city or a town, all of those people who felt overlooked, all of those people who were sick, all of those people who were looking for a new direction in their life went straight to Jesus. And then there was another group of people, the people that also knew that Jesus was coming into town, but they felt like they had their stuff in their life kind of figured out. They didn't really need to get super close to Jesus, so they just kind of kept him at a distance in their life. And that's who Zacchaeus was. I mean, look, the Bible says it, that Zacchaeus, he wanted to see Jesus, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. Now, whenever I read this story for years, I always assumed that Zacchaeus was climbing this tree out of necessity, right? Because he was short. I mean, that's what the story literally says. But then I started asking myself this question. Why didn't Zacchaeus just move his way to the front of the crowd? Right? I mean, if Zacchaeus wanted to be close to Jesus, all he had to do was push his way through a group of people, but he didn't do that. Because you see, Zacchaeus wasn't just separated from Jesus because of the crowd. He was separated from Jesus because of his sin. And listen, the sin that we know about in Zacchaeus' life is that he was a thief, that he was greedy, that he must have had some kind of insecurity in his life that made him feel like he didn't have enough, and so he took that from other people. And that, I'm sure, made Zacchaeus feel like, I can't get close to Jesus. Nobody wants me to get close to Jesus, so I'm gonna run, I'm gonna climb a tree, and I'm gonna keep him at a distance. I'm not gonna go any further, and that's what sin does, friends. Friends, is anything and everything that keeps us separated from Jesus. It's anything that creates distance between him. So let me ask you, what's the sin in your life? What comes to mind when I say that? What's that thing that's keeping you separated from Jesus? What's that thing that makes you feel like, I'm not gonna push my way through the crowd, I'm just gonna run ahead and observe from a distance? Whenever I feel that way, whenever I feel separated from Jesus because of my sin, I often feel like Jesus is paparazzi. What I mean by that is, a few years ago, I was in New York City, and I came around the corner, and as I came around the corner, I saw Brad Pitt walking down the street towards me. I saw this face just looking so deeply into my soul. And literally, he was like the most beautiful human I'd ever seen in my entire life. I mean, I audibly gasped when I walked around the corner. I was like, and just waited, for something to happen. But then once I got over my shock, I recognized that there was this cloud of paparazzi all around Brad Pitt. And they were taking his picture, and they were shouting his name, and they were following him to see what they wanted to do next, but they were separated from him. Brad was not paying attention. Brad, we're on first name basis, by the way. Brad was not paying attention to them because they didn't want to get to know Brad Pitt. They wanted to take something from him and use it for their own benefit. And I think sometimes we can treat Jesus like this. Now, maybe you've been coming to church for a long time. And you would say, yeah, I've got my life kind of figured out. I'm feeling good. But honestly, Jesus is at a distance. There hasn't been a moment in your life where you say, I need to turn from my sin. I need to turn from anything and everything that's keeping me separated from Jesus. Or maybe some of you are here tonight and church is a new idea for you. Jesus is a new idea for you. But something brought you here, and now that you're here, you're feeling like, man, I might want to get close to Jesus, but he might not like what he sees when he looks at me. I mean, I've done some things in my past that he might be ashamed of. That he might even be mad about. But friends, the good news for you and the good news for me is that when you and I are separated from Jesus, when we're at a distance from him, and we can't seem to find a way to get to him, he comes to us. Look at what it says in Luke 19. Jesus came to where Zacchaeus was. He looked up at Zacchaeus and called him by name. He said, Zacchaeus, quick, come down, because I must be a guest in your home today. See, when Zacchaeus was separated from Jesus, Jesus just went straight up to him. And notice this. He wasn't there to condemn Zacchaeus. He wasn't there to criticize him. He wasn't even there to confront him. He was there to ask him a question. It's the question that I'm asking you tonight. The question is, will you turn from your sin? Will you turn around? Will you eliminate anything and everything that is keeping you separated from Jesus, and will you follow him instead? The first way Jesus teaches us to turn is to turn from our sin. And the second way he teaches us to turn is to turn from our shame. The story goes on with Zacchaeus. He comes down from the tree, he walks with Jesus, and then all the people around him start gossiping, start saying stuff. I mean, this is what it says in verse 6. And Zacchaeus quickly climbed down, took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy, but the people were displeased. Have you ever felt like this? Have you ever felt like you found a new direction in your life? And you actually got enough courage to start changing some things in your life, and then all of a sudden that voice in your head or the people around you or the friends you have in your life start reminding you of every bad thing you've ever done and start telling you that is gonna affect every future thing you will eventually do, and it just feels like you are suddenly stuck in shame. Man, sometimes when we begin to follow Jesus, or we even want to follow Jesus, shame will block the way forward. It will get in our way, and it will keep us where we're at. I mean, how many times have you been stopped from finding a new direction because of shame? Maybe it's from something that you've done in your past. Maybe it's someone that you just can't quite forgive. Maybe it's that person is you can't quite forgive. Maybe it seems like you'll never be able to get over this bit of shame in your life. Or maybe it's even really silly, but it still makes you feel ashamed. I'll give you an example. When I was in high school, I had a really hard time falling asleep at like a reasonable hour. And look, this was before like LED lights and TikTok, okay? I just had a hard time falling asleep. Yes, I know what TikTok is, okay? I'm very cool. I just had a hard time falling asleep. Every night, I would give myself the same pep talk. I would say, Brent, it's 10 o'clock, turn the lights off, turn the distractions off, and just go to sleep. And every night I couldn't do it because I would obsess over things. I would think about things. I just couldn't turn my brain off. And it got to the point where I started getting really embarrassed about this. And I know that this can be like a silly thing to be embarrassed about, but it felt like I couldn't control myself, and that really scared me. And every night that I went to sleep really late, like 3 o'clock in the morning, and woke up the next day, I felt a little bit more ashamed. And that shame began to seep its way into my interactions, into my attention span, into my relationships. And it got to the point where I didn't know what to do next until finally I had had enough. And I knew that the only thing I could do was stand up to my shame and do something about it. So I went to my mom and I told her, and I was super embarrassed to tell her this. But you know what she did? She helped me find a counselor that connected me to some breathing techniques that were really helpful, some sleep pattern stuff that was really helpful, and I began to get better and better sleep. But the best part about that whole process for me wasn't getting better sleep. It was that when I was so stuck in my shame, when I couldn't seem to get free, I finally got enough courage to stand up and say, that is enough. Shame will not determine my way forward. I am finding a new direction. Shame will not have the last word when it comes to me. And you see, when we follow shame in our lives, it becomes really difficult to turn. Because shame cements us in our past, and it makes the future seem unrealistic. And the only way to move beyond it is to stand up to it. We see Zacchaeus doing the same thing. He said, Zacchaeus stood up and he said, look, Lord, here now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, which he had many times over, he says, I will pay back 4 times that amount. This is Zacchaeus saying, look, guys, I know that I have done wrong. I know that I have messed some things up, and I'm not proud of any of those things, but I am refusing to allow those worst moments of my life to dictate where my life is headed, because now I'm turning away from that shame, and I'm looking at Jesus, and I am following him. Wherever he tells me to go, that's where I'm headed, because I want to be free from my shame. I want to be let loose. And listen, some of you need to hear me tonight. Some of you have shame in your life, not because of something that you have done, but because of something that has been done to you. And to you, I want to say that that was not your fault. But I also need you to hear me say this, that the only way you'll be able to move out from that shame is when you stand up to it. When you get enough courage to find a new direction when it comes to the shame in your life. And there is no better way forward than Jesus, because he is able to save us from our sin. He is able to rescue us from our shame. He is able to give us a new direction in our lives. I love how Jesus responds to Zacchaeus, because he responds by saying this. Jesus said to him, today, not tomorrow, Not someday in the future, not when, Zacchaeus, you've got your life figured out and you have a good reputation. Right now, in the middle of your sin, in the middle of your shame, when everybody is criticizing you, when that voice in your head is shouting out at you, today, right now, salvation has come to this house. The Son, now Jesus is talking about himself. He said, the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Friends, I want to ask you tonight, does anybody feel lost? Does anybody feel cemented in shame? Does anybody need a new way forward? Then my question for you is, are you ready to turn around? Have you gotten to that point where you're ready to find a new direction and you are looking for Jesus? If that's you, the good news for you is that Jesus isn't like Brad Pitt. He isn't separated. He isn't moving beyond you. He is standing with arms wide open saying, I'm here. The door is open, friend. I will make my way to you and I will rescue you. If you're here today and you are just hitting the gas line of your life over and over and over again, don't wait till it explodes. Turn and find a new direction tonight. Because a revolution can begin. A revolution can start when you are willing to leave your sin, when you are willing to turn from your shame and commit to following Jesus. And some of you are ready to make that commitment tonight. Maybe for the first time, maybe you won't need to make it again tonight. And if that's you, I want to pray for you right now. And listen, I don't want you to stand up. I don't want you to even pray out loud. This is between you and God, but this is your moment. Don't miss it. This is your moment to turn from your sin, to turn from your shame, and join Jesus' revolution. So if that's you tonight, at all of our campuses, please pray with me right now. Jesus, Lord, for all of those who are joining me in prayer right now, we want to turn from our sin. We want to turn from our shame. We want a new direction. We want to follow you for real. We want a new kind of hope. We want you to rescue us. And we know, God, that we can't do it on our own. We need your help. So Jesus, would you, like Zacchaeus, would you forgive us of our sin? Would you meet us and accept us in the midst of our shame? And would you be our salvation? Because we believe that you seek and save those who are lost and in need of a new direction. We commit our lives to you. And we commit and we decide right now to do our very best to follow you from this day until forever. We trust you and we love you. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, listen, if you prayed that prayer with me for the first time tonight, I am so proud of you. I am so wildly proud of you. It is, I am convinced, one of the best decisions you will ever make in your entire life. But there's something I need you to do for me. If you prayed that prayer with us tonight for the first time, or maybe you prayed it again, I want you to take out your phone right now, and I want you to text the word REV, R-E-V, to 555-888. Open text message, type in 555-888, and then type the word REV. That will let us know who you are and how we can support you as you begin to follow Jesus. In just a moment, I'm going to have the pastors of your campus join you on the platform to celebrate with you, to just like go nuts with you for a little bit, but then also to tell you where to go to small group. And listen, if you made a decision to follow Jesus tonight, tell somebody. Tell somebody. Get up the courage to tell somebody that you did something really brave tonight. And friends, if somebody tells you that they made a decision to follow Jesus, go crazy for them. Celebrate them. Make a lot of noise for them because it's scary to follow Jesus. It's scary to make that decision, and we need to know that there's community and people around us who are willing to celebrate with us. And then come back next week, because next week we're going to talk about what it means for us to actually live it out, to commit ourselves day in and day out to following Jesus. So friends, thank you so much for being here tonight, and have a great time in small groups.